why are we having this day? This is what we call in naval aviation a safety stand-down. Okay? And it is to get people's mind, pilots, aviators' mind, and maintainers, get their mind right, because you should maintain a constant level of awareness. And what happens, this is from my leadership pitch that I've been given since I was a commander, is that it's the awareness level over time. And what happens, people start off and they're really aware, and then their awareness drops down, and there's some sort of a mishap. And right away, everybody's really smart. You know, when we had our last fatality of a wire strike, boy, we're all really concerned about wire strikes all of a sudden, right? And so what the purpose is of doing these periodic safety stand-downs is to get people's awareness level up before the mishap occurs. That's why we're doing this. Raise your awareness level before the mishap occurs. And we do these over a periodic of time. Now, in my business, in 39 years, I lost 85 friends, okay? So 85 wingmen, and 42 airplanes. That's not something that I want to relive again. So doing these periodic safety stand-downs I think are really critical. What is not good are what I call reactionary safety stand-down. You have a mishap, oh, we need to do a safety stand-down. Well, everybody's already aware. Why are you doing it, right? And so, slide please. So this is really what we want. We want you to maintain a constant level of awareness. It's a very safe airplane to fly, but the consequences of failure can be fairly severe, right? So you want to maintain a constant level of awareness in order to do that, and strive for professionalism and excellence. That's why we call ourselves naval aviators and not Air Force pilots, all right? And it's adherence to procedures and regulations, and not make stuff up, all right? Slide, please. Okay, so what I did for this brief is I looked at Sea Ray, Icon, C-Max, and Super Petrels. Those are our 4 classes of light sport amphibians. And I took it from the Aviation Safety Network, and I wanted to look at cause factors of a mishap. This is not mishap rate, all right? This is not what is a safer airplane to fly. Mishap rate, number of hours flown versus the type of mishap, that gives you your mishap rate. And that is not what this is about. I was trying to determine root cause of what are causing people to have a mishap, okay? The root cause, all right? And the reason, you know, Sea Ray has over 600 factory and experimental airplanes. So they're flying thousands of hours. They're the clubbiest, I mean, they're clubbier people more than Airstream camper people. And, but you know, we only have 57. So we can't compare a mishap rate because it's just impossible to determine that is. But, so we want to know incidents per aircraft type to show the cause factor. We want to eliminate the cause factor of why we make mistakes. And I break them down into pilot error technique and head work, all right? Pilot error fuel, gear up land, gear up water, which are kind of tied to these, but they're specific instances that we've had problems with. Engine, airframe, and things we just don't know what happened, all right? And this is where I got the information, and it's public knowledge. But it's the ones that are published. And then for us, ours, we've added a few that we know about that never made it into the Aviation Safety Network. Slide, please. So here's the Icon. They have 206 aircraft delivered, according to Dan Johnson. It's from he publishes it. So they have 206 aircraft delivered. This is U.S. only. These are the things that we know about. And if there was any sort of fatality. But as I looked at as opening each one of these up, 7 pilot error technique, 1 fuel, gear up land, gear down water that we know about. 3 are unknown with a total of 13 and a total of 4 fatalities. This is from 2017 on. This is the C-Max. There's only 20 of them in the country in U.S. 1 pilot error technique, 2 gear up land, 1 engine related, 1 airframe related, little thing like the single wing came off. 5 total with one fatality. Next slide, please. Here's the Sea Ray. Interesting, 98 are factory, 206 are kit built. They're not producing any more factory airplanes until someone because the Chinese folded on them. You can see 4 pilot air technique, 1 fuel, 1 gear up land, 3 gear down water, 4 engine related, 2 unknowns, 15 total from 2017 to 2024. And a reason I only did 2017 to 24 is because they have so many in country, and we really have our numbers start in 2017. So that's why we stopped it. What happens in a Sea Ray if the gear's down and they land in the water? It flips over. What about a C-Max? It's going to flip over. What about an Icon? It's going to flip over. Unfortunately, we've had plenty of owners of the Super Petrel. It doesn't flip. Thank you for doing that test data point for us. All right? Just don't do it anymore. Slide, please. Here we are. According to Dan Johnson, we got 60 in the country, and it includes the Super Petrel. I have added here some mishaps that we know about that didn't make it into the aviation safety network. Okay? But pilot error technique, we had 1 gear up land, 1 gear down water, 1 engine related, 912 ULS, carb clip, we think, many years ago. 1 airframe related, it was in an XP. Dano couldn't get the landing gear down. That's fixed. We have an emergency gear extension in the XP. 8 total, and of course we have our 3 fatalities from 2 mishaps from wire strikes. Slide, please. So here we are. I consolidated everything, but I think this is pretty interesting. Improper use of checklist or pilot error, 72% of our mishaps in our community. For Super Petrel only, of the ones we know about, it's 75%. We are the problem. And we pay through all of them through our insurance if it's an insurance claim, right? And if it's a fatality, run into a wire, it's a fatality, your family pays that price, right? And so proper training, proper use of checklists, and that's why we are here today, is to stress proper procedures, best practices when we talk about flying, going to come from Dano and Mark, and rigid adherence to our checklists. Now, when I was flying the Hornet and the Super Hornet, I could do that complex cockpit with my eyes closed in every one of my checklists. Every time I climb in 925 or 683, I open up my iPad, go to ForeFlight, and I use my digital checklist. And it's a far simpler airplane. So whether you're just going to go knock around for an hour or you're taking a long cross country, strict adherence to your checklist and doing that landing checklist every single time. Don't be distracted, okay? There's 2 things that we're going to talk about. We already talked about the Seaplane Association app, but when we talk about pre-flight planning, there are 2 things, 2 apps that go on your iPad. One is ForeFlight and the other one's Weather Sport. And I'm here to tell you that if Ensign Gortney had ForeFlight and Weather Sport, Ensign Gortney would have made a lot better decisions. All right? It's unbelievable tools. But but for all of our nav planning, everything that we do, you can do it on ForeFlight. You can set up the profile so that your fuel planning is correct. So you can do all of it. You can set up your flights. You set up your profiles for the airplane. You're going to do everything with it. You can check the NOTAMs. Everything that you need to know, you've got on ForeFlight. You can do it the night before. The beauty of the airplane, whether it's Garmin or Dynon equipped, is then you can sync. You connect with Bluetooth, or in the Dynon, it's a Wi-Fi network, and you can transfer your flight plan to your glass display in your Super Petrel. It's terrific. It's easier to make changes en route on your iPad by this way than the display bouncing all over as you go forward. But for pre-flight planning, once you've done your pre-flight planning, all you got to do, this is on the web, but it's on it. All you have to do then is hit the briefing chart. Go ahead and hit the briefing chart if the time's set up correctly. And it generates your entire brief for you. And once it's done it, over here, it's got all of the information, TFRs, SIGMETs, everything that you want to know about that particular flight. It's all in there, okay? You also, in nav planning, you go ahead and you can hit pack, and for your route, it updates it for your entire route as well. But you know, if you fly your airplane cross-country, and a cross-country could be from here to Sanford, this is a great, great tool. We had an owner in an airplane fly up north from New York to Manassas, right? And he goes, oh, the turbulence. I had to declare an emergency and land the airplane because the turbulence was so bad. And we go, well, was there a SIGMET? I don't know. You know, and that all goes into that pre-flight planning. Really, really a great tool. I'm not going to go into any more of it, but again, this will sync with your panel. It's Bluetooth if it's a Garmin. It's a Wi-Fi network. If it's Dynon, and it's absolutely terrific. One of the things that, going back to the slide, Dano, yeah. Actually, yeah. Go to Weather Sport. Come up here to Weather Sport. Weather Sport, it's an app on your computer and an app on your iPad. This does not replace pre-flight planning and getting a weather brief like we just showed you on ForeFlight. However, this goes out. You pull it down here. Where you want to go, a couple midpoints where you want to land. You hit apply. And down here on the bottom, when do you want to depart? You also set up in the data what your flight, what your aircraft true airspeed is, okay? And your fuel and everything like that in the settings. And then on the bar on the lower right, you can pick your takeoff time, and it's going to factor in winds aloft, forecasted winds aloft, and it's going to tell you the weather along that particular route. This is the grid format, so you can say, what's the grid view as we're coming? Let's just, you've got a little blue through here. You're going to take off at 1600. You're going to land at night at 2100. What's the weather here? You can click on that one, Dano. And the ceiling is at 2,200 feet, 10 miles, crosswinds 1 knot, thunderstorms. It tells you what the weather is there. It's a good picture. Another way you can do it is go to route profile. Does the same slider. It's got terrain. It puts and it gives you the winds aloft as you go forward, and you can look at it that way. Again, a terrific pre-flight planning tool. And then if you really want to look big picture, you can come on down to map view. And it's got the whole route for you as well, which is good if there's a front or something. You can look around here. Where's the front? Do I have to maneuver the flight around there as well? Again, a terrific little app. I don't know what the subscription rate is. It's worth every particular penny. Yeah. So again, it does not replace your weather briefing that you're going to have that you file in with ForeFlight. But this takes you out 3 days, and when Mark and I are doing cross countries going between here and Lake Anna, we're looking at it all the time to figure out what day that we're going to really want to go as it changes over time. Okay. Okay. Back to the brief, pre-flight planning. Okay. How many people keep their charts updated in their airplane? That's right. They're electronic, it's an EFB, electronic flight bag. So is your ForeFlight or your Garmin Pilot or EFBs. They're legal. But are your charts up to date? You want to make sure that you keep them up to date as you go in there. And then you're legal to go. So keep your charts up to date. It's easy to do. For ForeFlight, Mark and I do the $199, I think it's $199 a year that gives you flight charts, does everything else. It's even got IFR charts, even though we don't want to use them. We don't use them. But a very, 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 very handy tool, both of these programs. Okay? But some of the things is you got to take the oil cap off and you got to burp the engine. Okay? And we have a recommendation that once you take the oil cap off, you place it in the pilot's seat. So we now call this the Ziggy step. All right? You can thank that. We always want to check is the fuel on or off. In the LS, it's parallel to the deck, right? And in the XP, you'll see that switch. It's a license nut. And then we do a fuel check. And as we do the pre-flight, we learned this the hard way. We have a single header tank, and we want to check we want to do our fuel check with our gas jar. And I have no idea why it's called a gas jar, but it's called a gas jar. And but you're going to check, and you're going to see if there's any water or there's going to be any sediment in that. And the nice thing about the gas, you can pour it back into the into your tank. And then the POH, once a year in my squadrons, we'd always do a complete pre-flight of the A7 and F-18 using our pocket checklist. When we were doing training with Rodrigo on the XP, we did all our pre-flights with the checklist. But pretty soon you get pretty confident with what your checklist. So we won't be using the checklist, but the POH on the checklist is we walk through our pre-flight and what we're looking for. But we always start the pre-flight. I always start the pre-flight and I do the post-flight. I start with the nose on the LS. And I do the same thing with the XP because that's my habit pattern. All our planes have strengths and weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses of the LS is the nose gear, which was fixed in the XP. But so I always start with the nose, and then I work my way around the airplane. Okay, power's off. We're double checking cam locks. We're burping the engine, and if you've never flown with people, they go, "Why are you burping the engine?" You say, "You'll find out here in a second." And then while I'm pulling this engine through is when I go ahead and check the leading edge of all my props. Okay, as I'm burping, I check each and every prop, and I'm checking the iconal edge, is that what it's called, or whatever it is, on the prop. And then cotter pins, castellated spindle nuts and cotter pins. You're always checking, double checking, and where they are. Tire inflation, 48 pounds is what we put in the mains on the LS because it's got tubes, and if you put it up to around 48 pounds, you're not going to break. If you do it to, I forget what it says on the side of the airplane, but if you turn real sharp, you can, the tube will stop turning and it'll break the valve off in there. So you keep it up to 48 and we haven't seen any problems. We always have, we'll show you, it's a Ryobi handheld air compressor. It's a great little tool to have. And then you want to check the oil quantity, of course, once you've got the engine burped. You want to check that oil quantity between the flats. We like it on the lower side of the half. Every time we've added just a little bit of oil, it all comes out the side of the airplane. So, you got to be careful. It doesn't take much oil in that oil tank to get that to move up to the flat. Don't overfill the airplane because you probably won't be able to pull the airplane through. Okay, next. Fluid colors. I think it's important what colors are in this airplane and where are you going to see fluid colors. There's only 3 colors. Well, the first one's brown, and if it's brown, there's an oil problem, right? You got an oil leak someplace. And where are we going to see it on either one of these airplanes probably if you got an oil leak? We're probably going to see it right underneath the lower edge of the cowling as it comes down on the firewall and comes between the lower cowling. We'll point that out. If it's blue, it's coolant. And if it's red, it's brake fluid or someone has over-oiled the K&N filter.
Bill has over-oiled.
Yeah. So if you see red on the cowlings, that's not from your brake fluid. That's because some knucklehead over-oiled the K&N filter. But the red brake fluid, it's obviously red brake fluid, and you know where that's going to be.